Hey guys, what's up? It's Zola, and today we're a Sunday, so I thought we'd do something a bit different. And also, I think we've reached a point in the learning of the programs we're doing to kind of start doing a few crossovers, and I think as well where we've got with After Effects before we dive into filters and all that kind of stuff, to show you that you've probably learnt enough to do some kind of cool stuff already, hopefully, if you've watched all the videos. So what we're going to do today is I have this photo of me on holiday when we went to Switzerland a couple of months ago, taken by my friend Elliot, and we're going to try and create a moving scene out of this. Now, I've purposely picked something pretty hard to do. There's lots of tricky challenges here because I figure, like, why show you something that's really easy, because in real life, like, if you're gonna have to do this, chances are it's going to be a pain in the neck. There's going to be lots of problems, so we have a few problems here straight away. The first one is that I've downloaded this at low res from Facebook, so as you can see here, I'm at 100%, so I could have got the original photo from my friend Elliot, but what I'm going to try and attempt to do is do this with the low res photo, and we're going to use some of the techniques we've used to mask stuff out, and then hopefully create a moving camera scene, and it should be a lot of fun. So it might be a bit longer than our usual ones, but I'm going to show you how we go about doing this, because it's something that you're probably going to have to do if you go into the industry at some point. So let's start with the first job. So we're going to have a camera kind of down here, and it's going to kind of pan up, and I'm going to be in the foreground, and we're going to have the trees as the midground, and then this kind of like mountain as the background, and then I might comp in some smoke and stuff. So let's do that. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to want to separate these into 3 layers. So we want me, and then trees, and then background. So let's start with that. So we're going to start with foreground, and I'm going to come up to my little selection tool here, and I'm going to try and make a rough selection. I'm not going to do this like, like anally good, but just enough to show you how I would go about building one of these scenes, because obviously I still want to keep this tutorial length for us. In reality, this would probably take me about an hour if I was doing it like really well. And also we've got some big challenges here because of the lack of resolution in the JPEG. Separating these trees from the mountains over there is going to be a nightmare. So I'm going to say that's alright for my foreground. Let's have a look. I could probably be refined a bit, so I'm going to do refine mask, Control Alt R, and I'm going to hit that to 0. I'm going to take the feather off, but maybe smooth it a bit, increase the contrast a bit, and we've got to remember we're at 200% here, so I'm going to say that looks pretty much alright. At this distance, yeah, let's just say that's cool. So that's the foreground, that's cool. We're going to duplicate the background again, turn that one off. So in this, in the midground, we're going to want just trees, right? So we're going to want to get rid of me first of all, so let's do that. I'm going to use the selection from here, so Control Select on the thumbnail, and I'm going to come into here, and let's just see what Content Aware can do first of all. So Shift Backspace to bring up Content Aware, and it's done a pretty good job, but we're going to have to go in and kind of tidy this up. So let's do that. I'm just going to select my lasso tool here, and oops, and just do some Content Aware filling, and this, to be honest, usually I might like clone stamp, or there's a million, I've got to stop doing that. There's a million one ways to do this, but I think for the sake of what we're doing here, this should be just fine. So I'm just basically trying to find the lip of where the two I tell you why, I've been doing some Photoshop work earlier this morning, and I've just got that shortcut burned into my head right now. So as you can see here, we're still getting a bit of smudging, so I might be inclined to use my clone tool and just try and get some cleaner areas and just brush over there. I think that's going to do it. That should be fine. Switch back to my lasso tool and just try and get that edge again. And this kind of edge along the tree kind of looks alright. I think if I just move the edge over a tiny bit, you're going to see that we've got a problem there. We've got too much cloning. If I zoom out a bit, I'm going to see if there's anywhere. So there's not really anywhere that matches this pattern, so I think we're going to have to pretty much stick with content aware here. So let's just do that. And you know, it's done an alright job anyway. Maybe clone a bit down here and over here because we're starting to get too much repetition, and that's never good. And I'm just going to fill that. It's not done a particularly great job there, but again, I think we should be fine. If I'm going to select clone stamp and just move that down a bit. And then obviously we got the head here over the mountains, so let's try. So what we're basically doing here is building the background so that if the camera moves past a certain area, then it's going to be able to see behind. And so what we're going to do here is just literally, again, just hit S to get your clone stamp, hit Alt. Oh, my keyboard shortcut's being weird today. Okay, for some reason so yeah, just hit Alt, and then to be honest, that looks pretty alright for the back. I might pick the top of this tree instead. I'll just bring that in, and then maybe just there. Okay, cool. So we pretty much got rid. Oh, there's still a bit of my ear here, I think, which we don't want. Cool. So okay, so let's just say that's our mid ground here, and I still don't like this. This just looks like a smudge. So I'm gonna do something closer to that. So that looks kind of alright for the mid ground. So I'm gonna save this as well to let's just save this to assets here, and I'm gonna call this mountains, and just in case I crash and we lose this, so let's call this mids. Now the problem is I need to I need to separate the trees from the background, but first what I'm going to do is do the background. So I'm going to duplicate that again and do BG, BJ, completely different type of background. So what we're going to do here is just try and get rid of the trees, and then maybe like clone a bit more of these mountains. So again, let's see what content aware can do. I'm going to make a general selection with marquee, hit add to just add areas, and then I'm going to come with lasso and just remove all the stuff I don't want to fill. So again, this is all stuff I covered in the Photoshop stuff, so none of this should be too confusing to you guys, hopefully. And there we go. We got rid of that. Obviously we're going to want to get rid of me as well, so I'll probably add that back in there. And let's just, I might try a different approach. Well, let's just try content aware first, see what it does. It's actually done a pretty good job, to be fair. We're going to have to go in and let's just remind ourselves of how high that is. So yeah, I mean, let's go in and maybe paint some more. Let's paint back over these areas, the ones that are smudged, basically, where you can kind of tell. This stuff out here is fine because we got like the mist, and so that's not really ever gonna look wrong. And also we're gonna comp some smoke. I'm not sure if I'll use, I might do it from scratch, or I might just use a piece of stock footage that I have from the Action Essentials, because, you know, using elements is also an art in itself. I might show you both depending on how much time we have. So we're getting a bit of repetition there, I don't like that. That's better. And we've still got a bit of smudging there, so let's just try and fix that. There we go. That part there is probably still a little dirty, so let's fix that, and I'm going to say that's okay, and then let's try and move this down a bit further again. Just take that edge, let's say we're happy with this edge. Whoop. Content aware. Okay, so we've moved that down even further now. So let's move the... we're going to kind of want to go beneath this line here, so I'm going to get my ruler. Hit Control R to bring your rulers up, and then you just drag from the side. So this is kind of as low as we're going to want to go. Probably going to want to go a little lower. So if I compare that on my mid, you're going to see that we've not quite brought this down far enough just yet. So I'm going to bring this down even more. And again, let's move the selection down. And probably just a bit more. So as you can see here, content aware fill has really like changed the game. In terms of what we're going to see behind, we're probably not going to see behind here too much. So the thing with this kind of stuff is it's quite easy to kind of go too crazy with some of the stuff that you're doing. So the best thing to do, I find, is to let me just bring this down. So as you can see here, I just want to bring back like a bit more of the actual landscape here, because I don't want it to kind of clash too much. Let's bring this little part here up as well. So I'm just making a selection, hit Control J to move it onto its own layer, and then I'm just selecting these two, hitting Control E to merge them back into the same layer. So let's just say we're alright with that. Now the tricky part we're going to have to do here is make a selection for these trees. Now like I said, this is less than ideal because we have lots of tricky edges, and so we're going to have to use our channel selection method here, which I've shown you before, and as usual it's the blue channel that's going to show us the most contrast. So we're going to drag this into a new layer to make a copy. I'm going to hit levels, and okay, so that's pretty cool in terms of that. So what we're trying to do is just bring the contrast in, and that's kind of looking close. So I'm going to hit that once and then bring levels back up again, and we're going to just do it again. So obviously this grey area we want to kind of bring to white almost, and I'm going to hit OK again, and let's try that one more time. And as you can see here, this is getting really pixelated, and that's just because we're working with a low res JPEG, so you're just going to have to take that into account. If you're using high res photos, you can do this with without damaging your stuff too much. And I'm going to do that, and then I'm just going to get a paintbrush here, and just going to paint this white because I don't want to destroy too much of the edge information there. So this is, like I said, this is super rough, but for the sake of the tutorial and also showing you what it's like working with like less than perfect edges, this is going to do. And then what I'm going to do is hit Control L again, and we're just going to attempt to somewhat bring that in. Edges are so crunchy now. We'll see how that works. So I'm going to hit Control on the thumbnail there, select our RGB, and then mask that, and then invert that. Okay. So as you can see here, we've got, this is our selection. It's not perfect, but if we hit Control Alt R to bring our kind of refined mask in this case, because we had the mask selected. And as you can see here, if you look in this area, it's really crunchy, but if I just add a bit of feathering, it's not going to be too bad. So I'm going to knock that up to maybe 1. Contrast is alright, I think. So I'm going to hit OK, and I think that's going to do it. So we got foreground. So if I hit Alt here, we got foreground, got the mid, and then we got the background. So let's say that's cool. Let's go into After Effects. I have the photo here, which is obviously not what I want. So off screen, I'm just going to find the thing we've just been working on, which is in Assets. Bring this in here. Now this is going to ask me what I want to do. Do I want to bring it in as footage? And I'm going to say yes. Or do I want to say composition? Actually, I'm going to bring it in as a composition and hit OK. What this is going to do is create a new composition with our layers that we just created in Photoshop. Now, why this is useful, as you can see, it's even got the ruler we made. So I'm gonna go to View and Clear Guide to get rid of that. But what this means, and I'm going to switch this back to full, is this is the way I like to work with Photoshop files, and this is why I was saying, like, don't kill yourself with work, because if I come into here, into this layer, and let's just say for no reason whatsoever I draw a big orange in the background here, a big orange squiggle, and I hit save, so Control S and come into here, it's going to update on here. So why that is useful is you'll see later on when we're doing the camera, because we'll find that if there is a bit that we need to clone, we can go back and just clone that area and it will update in here and stuff. So that's kind of useful. So I'm going to create, so if I come into here and do our composition settings, you'll see it's not wide, so we can't really go wider than that because that's as wide as our composition is. But in terms of height, what I'm going to do here is change this to 1920. Actually, so 630, so I'm going to go to 920, 1080, sorry, lock this and then go back to 630, which is going to give us the correct 16:9 ratio, but within the space that we have in our thing. So there we go. So here we go. So now the next job is to create a camera. You can do this by going up to Layer, New Camera, or Shift Control Alt C. I'm going to make this a 50mm and hit OK. Make all of these. We don't need that background because if we go back into our document, you'll find that's this layer and we don't really need it. I'm going to make all three of these 3D, and let's have a look in our custom view what we're doing. So this is what we have at the moment. So what I'm going to want to do is bring the foreground forward, so this needs to be closer to the camera, the mids, and you know, I'm not quite sure how far this needs to be yet, so we're just gonna have to play with this, and I'm gonna push the background like way back and come back into active camera and see how that looks. So obviously that looks a bit weird right now, so the background needs to be scaled up, and you know, the midground looks fine. Now what we're going to try and get is a phenomenon called parallax, which is when different layers are stacked in space like this, then we get the things closer to the camera will move more and the background will move less, which is what creates this 3D effect. So let's have a look if we can get that bang in. So what I'm going to do is, in fact, I'm going to create a null here. And we haven't really talked about nulls yet, but basically I'm going to parent my camera to this null, and then that way I can just move the null up and down, and so there we go. As we can see here, the background is moving way less than me and the trees, which is what's going to create this kind of effect. So actually what I'm going to do is just scale all this up. It's not going to look great, but let me just, I'm going to create a new null, and I'm going to parent all these three to the null. Then that way I can just scale the null and everything's going to scale at the same rate. Now obviously at 100% this is looking like pretty raggedy right now, but you know, I just you know, for the sake of this tutorial, you get what I'm trying to do. So let's do a slow move here over like maybe the course of 3 seconds. So if I zoom in here, find 3 seconds, hit N and then trim the comp to the work area. So now my whole composition is just the size of this 3 seconds, and I'm going to move up let's start like right down here. Now I don't want to go to the point where like we can see the background over this, so I think about there is cool. Let me just swap these two around. So we got start point, and let's make the end point like way up here, and I could even extend that into white, but I'm not going to do that. You can just maybe get away with a fade out at the end. So let's have a look at what we got so far. Now it's happening really quick, so maybe I've completely misread the length of this. This needs to be more like 7 seconds. I'm going to select all, Control A, and just drag them all back, and then we just need to stretch out the length of this animation. There we go, that's kind of cool. Now if we want to make this more drastic, we would increase the distance between these layers. So if we come into custom again, let's move the background like way back, and we're gonna have to scale it up, but you know, we will deal with that. So now we're just creating more of a separation between these layers. Let's go back to active camera, and obviously now we're gonna have to scale everything up again, and we're really gonna start to lose the quality in our layers. Let's just scale this just so it's wide enough to fill the frame, but let's see that. And as you can see now, we're getting way more of a difference between the trees and the foreground and the background, and this is where the fun stuff comes in, because I've got this atmosphere element, and I'm going to drop this in, and I'm going to make this 3D as well. Let's have a look where that is in position. Okay, so we got it here, and it's actually the wrong way around, so I'm going to go transform, flip vertical, and let's see what that looks like. But basically I think I'm going to move it between the trees and the background. So if I come to position here, there we go. So we want it kind of like somewhere there, I guess. And actually I want to flip it the other way as well. Transform and flip horizontal. Okay, now let's go back to our active camera. Now we can't really see it, so let's just solo it, make sure it is there. Okay, so it's quite low, so I might want to move it up a bit, and maybe I want to change it to like screen mode, just so it kind of brightens everything. And let's just move the clip along just to make sure that okay, there we go. Now this move is kind of slow, and I think the footage is, if I just solo this footage as I play it, you're going to see it's happening like way too quick. So what we're going to do is we're going to time stretch it, and I haven't done time stretching yet, so don't you worry about that. I'm going to stretch this to about 400%. And we're going to bring it to maybe that kind of area, and we could just bring it kind of right, and we might even layer it a couple of times. Transform, flip horizontal, vertical, sorry, and do that. But no, actually let's not do that. But let's unhide this. Now you're going to see there's that kind of smoke, and we've got this horrible, if we watch it by itself, by default the speed will look like this, which is really horrible. So we're going to change the way that After Effects does the 3D, and I'll do this, I might do this in the next lesson to explain how this works. But as you can see now, we've got like a far smoother slow motion, so don't worry too much about how that happened, because I will cover that. So let's have a look at our final result. There we go. Again, this will mainly depend on the quality of your elements. You can do stuff like, you can also have fun by maybe if you get the background, well, what you can do with the camera actually is you can do, if I bring up the camera options, I'll fit this to 100. If you go to camera options, you've got depth of field, and you can switch that on. And if I crank the blur level like up, you'll see what we can do. And there's this thing called focus distance, and so we can bring it to like maybe where I am, and you can change the way that the blurring looks in here. So as I select different ones, you're going to see this update eventually. Please note, like, depth of field is quite a slow effect, but if I keyframe the focus distance here, and maybe I'll start it on me, and maybe I'm going to maybe I'm going to decrease this blur level so slightly. I mean, this is a bit extreme for my liking. Just bring that down to maybe, that's not enough, no. Yeah, so something like that, so just kind of more subtle. And so we're going to start here. In fact, no, maybe I will make it a bit more pronounced just for the sake of showing you. Not that I would do this usually. So as you can see here, it's really thinking, because depth of field is actually quite a slow effect. So we have start with mean focus, and then as we go up, so you look at the amount of time. This is why I don't really use it that much. We would change the focus distance to actually we would want this to be further, and you could calculate this accurately, but I'm just going to try and eyeball it for now. Yeah, so something like that. So let's give this a final playthrough. I'm going to shift preview. Might try this on half, see how fast that goes. Okay, so this is going to take a while, but just to recap what we've done, we've started with a photograph, we've split into 3 layers, painted behind, so that we can see areas through like the back of the shirt, like shirt and the legs. And you have to paint behind, because if not, like when this layer moves further than you have in your actual picture, you need to have stuff behind it, or else the effect is not going to work. And so this way, when we stagger it in 3D, we have the midground, which we've isolated using a levels command, and then we've comped in some smoke, obviously not particularly well, but for the sake of this tutorial, I think it will do. So here we've got a slight focus pull as well, so I started more in focus, and then I'm going out of focus as it switches to the trees and the mountains here. And yeah, I mean, it goes to show, I mean, this has taken half an hour, but this is really me like slowing down and explaining. And if you have a really good quality photo, you can do some really amazing things with this. And there's other stuff you can do. Obviously, I could have added some snow in here or something similar like that, but that might be for another day. I think for now this is gonna kind of do. And I'm getting really impatient, so I'm just gonna play this. There we go, we got a bit of smoke going on in there, atmosphere, so you can see quite quickly how, and again I've got this on half. If I play this at full and turn off the depth of field, and it's going to need to update again, but you can see this is like way quicker, and the layers are not really moving quick enough for motion blur, because if we turn this on here, we're going to see we're not really going to get that much motion blur. But yeah, that covers it for today, guys. I hope you learned something, and if you have any questions, let me know. From the next lesson, we'll go back and maybe do time remapping was the first one, slow motion and that kind of stuff, and how to fake that effect, which there's more than one way to do. So I'll see you in the next lesson. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you enjoyed this longer tutorial, or whether you want me to go back to the quicker ones. It's up to you guys. I think I'll drop one of these in every now and again, at least until I've covered everything in the program I feel I need to cover. Okay, that's me I'm out.